before we jump into this, right, again, let's come back to this framework that I introduced to you. What does every single question have? What approach do you want to have?
GST.
GST. What is GST, Nathan?
Goals, steps,
and tips. Okay, goals, steps, and tips. Okay, and this is just a helpful framework that I introduced to you guys so that we can have an approach to each kind of question. You may not need to do this and write this explicitly each time, but what we can do is have this framework here handy so that when we get stuck, how can I use what I know to find what I don't? That's what we're coming down to. Before we do that though, I think it's really helpful to think about, hang on, what am I actually looking at here? The topic is called Locus and the Parabola. What is a locus though?
a point.
Moving
point.
instead of
It's
Yeah, right.
ridiculous.
Yeah. So a locus is a lot of things, right? But one thing that we can describe it is a point
That follows a certain amount of condition.
moving along a path.
Oh, did you?
Oh, this is the
A point moving along a path, and this point has to move along this path with certain parameters. And we knew that with a parabola, that it's equidistant from the focus and the directrix. Okay, that's what we define a parabola as. Now, let's look at this first question here that you have on your other sheets in front of you. Callum, do you want to read it out for me?
Find the coordinates of the focus of the parabola x squared equals 8 bracket y minus 1.
Before we even start, what kind of parabola is this?
Concave up.
Concave up? It's concave up, right? I know that my concave up parabola has formed the equation x squared equals to 4ay if it's at the origin. Obviously, this one's going to have some shifts here, okay? What I want to think about, the goal of this question is that I'm trying to find the focus. I want to find the focus.
Is this locus and parabolas?
Yeah.
Yes, this is the stuff that we cooked.
Find the focus, okay? The steps are, there are some intricate steps involved, okay? Step one is, we have this expression here, but first of all, we actually have to find the vertex. After we find the vertex of this parabola, we can't immediately find the focus. There's actually something that we need before we can actually find the
focal
focus.
length.
Yes, and we say that, I'll just write find A, the
Well, that's
focal
just.
length.
Isn't A just 2?
But we'll work it out. But I just want to break this down for you. Okay, this is how I would approach it. And 3, then you can easily find.
Approach every question like this. You'll get like one question done in the whole HSC.
And again, like I reiterate, right? We ease our way into these. We apply this framework for the easier questions, so that when we get to the more tricky questions, we know how to approach them. Last tip I would get is, how do I know what the equation of the how do I actually know where the focus actually is, like the coordinates of the focus?
It's A away from the vertex.
Yeah, right. The focus is A away from the vertex. Usually when it's at the origin, we say it's 0A, but that's going to depend on where our vertex actually is and also what orientation our parabola has. But that's one way you can understand. It's A away from the vertex. So let's look at this question here. I've got all these pieces here. I know my goal, I know my steps, and I know the tips that I need to use. When I'm looking at this question, I want to first find the vertex. And I know that my vertex usually has x minus h all squared equals to 4a y minus k, where the coordinates here, the coordinates are going to be my vertex, right? Let me just write that out for you here. So in this case, what's your h value?
0.
And what's your k value?
0.
K value.
Not 0.
Oh, 1.
1, right.
1.
So the vertex
Where do we get H and K from again?
Oh yeah, I see. Because
is 0, 1.
HC x squared has nothing with it, so it's 0.
Yep.
And y minus 1. That's what we get out.
So this is our standard form of the parabola, if you look back on your sheet there, for the concave up parabola. And the h value is 0 because obviously there's no value there. If you sub in h as 0, you just get x squared. And if you look over here, well, it's just matching it up. What's your k value? It's just 1.
So that's
Well, it's just, well, look at this, right? The formula says y minus k. So that's going to be, that's going to be a positive 1. That's my vertex. So if I drew this out, I know it's concave up. My vertex is going to be at 0, 1. Just like that.
I got blisters on my fingers.
And really, I should write here 4a, shouldn't I? Okay.
Yeah.
So if I know this part of the information now, I know that, hang on, to find a,
This is 2.
yeah, I just equate that coefficient there. To find a, I got 4a is equal to 8. A which is equal to 8 divided by 4, which is 2. Once we have all that, let's go back to my tip, right? The focus is A away from the vertex. And you always want to be really careful here. You want to know what orientation your parabola is in. If it's concave up, then I want it up from that vertex there. Well, 2 units away from 1, that's just 3. Okay. So, therefore, the focus is 0, 3. Can you see how we've got all this information here? That's how I can break down the question and get my answer as 0, 3. Okay? And even for questions where you haven't seen them in a long time, I want you to be thinking about all the tools that you have and how you go about answering that question. Try for the next one there for me.